Today I'm going to be editing an image from a previous video where I showed you guys a behind the scenes of a photo shoot that I did at home. Hi, I'm Vanessa. Welcome to my channel. I like to do self-portraits, book cover photography, anything that's creative photography related that I do all by myself. In a previous video, I showed you guys a look at a self-portrait photo shoot that I did at home, and I asked you, do you want to see a speed edit? Would you like to see a tutorial? What would you like to see of these images? And most people said that they wanted to see a tutorial. So I edited one of these images today, and I break down all the steps that I go through so that you can see how I go from this to this. So if you're excited to see that, hit the like and let's get started. Here's the image that I am going to work on. And as you can tell, it's pretty much a crappy image just as it is. It's got cords, the floor, the tripod legs. Like, there's a lot about this image that's not working. So it does need a lot of Photoshop help. What I do typically is I would want to cover all that stuff up. I would either cover it up or I'd crop it, but this is pretty close. So I want more space. I don't want to crop it in. If I cropped it in, it would just get really small and the composition would not work quite the same as what I envisioned. So, I mean, you could do that, and that is definitely the lazy way to do it, but that's not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is actually going to be taking a blank image of the background and filling in the other areas. So a lot of masking. Masking is not necessarily hard, but it is tedious. So if you are planning on doing something like this, you should probably be prepared to spend a lot of time on your one image. So I'm gonna add this to my original image just by grabbing the layer and dragging it over to the other image. And now I can close this one, and I have this as a layer here. Now, I don't want the frame, so I'm actually gonna make this a little bit bigger. Edit. Free transform. I'm going to link it so it doesn't get strange proportions, and I'm going to increase the size and move it around until the frame is gone. The other thing that I can do a little bit, if it's just like a little bit, like let's say we're here, I can also warp it just a touch. So I click the warp up here, and I don't want to do this too much because if you do it a lot, the plants and leaves will start to look strange, but just like little touch up. See how I'm just doing it a little bit on the image? I'm not like warping the whole thing crazy. Like, that will work. So we're gonna go with this. When I'm working on a Photoshop edit that is going to be fairly extensive, any of my composite images, what I do is I do the composite stuff first. So adding all of the pieces together like a puzzle before I start the actual like editing for style and stuff like that. I'm putting the pieces together, like complete the puzzle first and then do the edit as though that was your original straight out of camera image. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm starting with the adding all the pieces in. So I have my two layers. And how to add a layer mask is pretty easy. I'm on the layer that I'm gonna wanna be masking, and I go down here and I click this little icon. And then a white box will show up next to it, and that is my mask. I am selected the mask right now. You can see here that's selecting the image, that is selecting the mask. You wanna be on the mask when you're painting because otherwise you're drawing on the image and you don't wanna do that. So I'm on the layer mask, I have my brush, and now these will always be white or black when you're working on layer masks, and I want to be on black, and that will start to erase things. But actually, for this image, I'm doing it in the reverse. So I'm going to double click on this mask, and there's a properties panel that comes up. And when I click invert, it turns the entire mask black and hides it. And now I want to have white so that I can bring it back. And this way I can see where I'm going and what I'm covering instead of like kind of randomly trying to erase where I am and match it that way. I can get much more exact on where I want to go doing it in the opposite way. So it depends on the image, it depends on what you're putting in and what you're masking. Sometimes you will want to work on an inverted mask, like in this case, but sometimes you won't. So I'm just going to start by filling in like the obviously crazy areas. And then as I get closer to the other plants, I'm going to get really tiny and really small and a lot more detailed on what I'm doing. And honestly, I'm looking at this corner down here thinking, I don't really know if I want to mask this mess, so I might do a little bit of cropping and save myself a little bit of time over in this area. By doing that, I've kind of cut out quite a bit over here that I'm going to have to deal with. That was more tricky than I wanted to. Now this leaf is cut off by the tripod, so I'm going to kind of have to build a new tip. What I like to do is just find a piece of plant and just mask right up to the edge as though it's coming over top. It works really well with these like organic type things. If I was to be trying to mask a lot of really straight like lines, geometric patterns or something, it could kind of be a nightmare trying to match things up. But because this is just like chaotic flowers everywhere, things underneath, things above, it's a lot easier to get away with. And my brush is not all the way soft. I like it to be a little bit hard on the edges, just so that when I'm coming up right against something straight like this leaf, it is not going to be too blurry. But when I get to other areas that it's too hard, what I do, let's see if I can find a spot. Okay, let's go down here. What I do is I will do the area, and that's maybe a little bit too harsh, so I'll click on the blur tool and I'll just give it a swipe with the blur tool. And the blur tool is on the mask, so it's not blurring the image, it's just blurring the lines of the masking and making that blend better in that spot than it did when it was unblurred. It was too harsh. So this way, instead of changing my brush for all the little spots, I keep it a little bit harder for the smoother edges, and then I just go over with a blur for the other areas that I need it. I like to keep to the solid lines as much as possible because it is just easier and will take less time. So masking in around a leaf like this one, I prefer when I get to areas that do have something like this, I have to really love it to want to mask in and around here. So I know I showed you how I would do it here, but I think in this example, I'm actually just going to be following this pretty solid line here and masking completely over that little tidbit. Okay, so we have a good little chunk done here. What we can do to make sure that it is perfect is click on the backslash and it will show us in red the layer mask areas. So there's not a lot of like red haze showing up in here or anything, so it looks like I've got it pretty good. We can zoom in close and get any little tiny pieces that I missed, which there actually are a couple, but they're just small. And just touch it up so that it's literally like perfect. You can also mask like this if you want to. Sometimes I find it difficult to see exactly where I'm trying to go around and stuff. So on this particular image, I don't find it all that helpful to mask with it on, but I do like to check with it. Masking that took about an hour and a half. And now from this point, what I will do is Control-Alt-Shift-E. And I will have a layer of those two combined. And at this point, what just get comfortable already. What I will do is I'll start editing it and retouching it like I would a portrait. So going and taking blemishes and stuff off the skin. The only thing that I would do differently here than I would, like, say a photo I took for a profile picture is I do it to the extreme. So like I take everything out and I make it more perfect than I would if it was going to be like a photo of myself where I'm trying to be myself, because I'm not being myself in this, I'm like being a character. So I do a pretty heavy edit. I use different tools for that. I usually start with the spot healing brush tool. I use that one the most. And then if that doesn't work, then I will go with like a clone brush or something. So I've got the little mark from when I had a piercing, little freckles, just little marks. I take it all out. Okay, so I've got everything that I think I can do with the spot healing brush. Now I'm going to switch over to the clone stamp. And I like to usually do the clone stamp on a empty layer and then do current and below so that I can adjust it better if I need to. And the first thing I'm going to fix is right here, the lace on the wig. The other thing that I want to take out with the clone stamp tool is the black bra straps that are showing. So the next thing that I do is I start doing dodge and burn, and I create a new layer to do this. I fill the layer with gray on soft light, and then I click this fill with soft light. And you can't see it because it's on soft light. It's like this. When it's on soft light, you can dodge and burn, and it will impact the image on its own completely separate layer, so you're not like damaging the image. So I'm on midtones. This is too high. I'll bring this down. I'm just trying to brighten the already highlights that are in the hair. And now I do the same thing with the burning tool, but on the shadows, not the highlights. I want to make the eyes pop a little bit more, and so to do that, I'm going to make them sharper by making another layer of what we've got. And I'm going to go to Filter, High Pass. And because I'm just going to be applying this to the eyes, I'm just going to like go right on an eye and drag this to a spot that I like. I'm going to go with that. Set that to soft light. Let's zoom in and see what that's doing. Okay, so now I'm going to do the inverted layer mask thing like I did before, and then just bring it back on the eye area. And I actually kind of liked it on the eyelid too. Make the eyeshadow a little bit sparklier. So really subtle difference there. When I'm done my dodge and burning, this is where I'm going to start playing with color, and I like to tweak color, usually mostly with selective color layer. Green is my favorite color, but I like to play with greens the most. And surprisingly though, it's the yellow that I like to change. So instead of picking green and changing that, like I can pull the yellows out. And I will sometimes. I usually like to go with tweaking the yellows first. The reason for that is my skin tone has yellows in it, and when I play with the yellow, I change the skin tone and the green in the leaves, so it's changing the tone of the overall image. Whereas if I was tweaking just the green, my skin tone would be staying pretty much the same because my skin tone's not green. So if I want my skin to stay more yellow and just impact the leaves, then I would pick green over yellow, but I wanted overall the image to have a more bluish kind of tone and no yellow at all. I don't really like yellow. I like cooler images. I wouldn't go too crazy with it because it will make my skin look really weird if I try to drag it all the way. So I tweak it a bit, and if that doesn't change, sorry, I got cat hair all over me now. If that doesn't change the green enough, then I will go to green and play with the greens. And this is not something that I do on every image, but just because I'm feeling like this corner is pretty dark, I'm going to make another layer and just do white gradient and just make like a burst of light coming in. And now let's play with the blend modes and get something a little bit different, or pull it down. Because when you look at me, you can see the lights like coming from that way anyway, so it makes sense if it's a little bit bright. I think I made it too big though, so I'm gonna make it smaller. I just wanted it a little bit. I'm gonna put a layer mask on this and fade the edges so I don't have that line there. I think I'm just gonna go with soft light. Like that's just kind of bringing it up so that it matches the rest of it. It's not overdoing it at all. Now to play with the contrast, one of the things that I like to do is I like to use a black and white filter. And if I set this on soft light, it will totally change the image. And so this is just on default, but if you go into the black and white properties, you can click on different like black and white filters, which do different things. And so it's going to change the contrast of all the different colors and stuff. And I like to go through here and just pick what I like for the image. So I kind of like this one, and I kind of liked the infrared because it made my lips a little bit darker. It seems to desaturate it too because it's black and white. I just like the look of this. I don't usually have it on 100%. I usually bring it down, depending on the image, of course, where I like it. Let's go with that. Oops. And to pop the color a little bit more, I make another layer, and I can kind of do the same thing. This, instead of a black and white layer on soft, I have another layer of the whole thing on soft, and that's going to do it even more. And again, I just bring that down. But it does make the colors richer, it seems. So, and I really like that. I don't think there's anything else that I really want to do with this. I like the color, I like the composition, I don't mind that it's a little bit to the side. I like to have like space, so like I can use this as a thumbnail now. I can write a title here for YouTube and be like speed edit, or not speed edit, tutorial or something, and then I can use that. So it doesn't bother me that it's not centered. And I think I've got enough leaves there. So that's it. I'm happy with that. Thanks so much for watching my tutorial. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them down below. Subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay up to date on all the things that I'm creating. Thanks so much for watching.